Kia ora, good morning. Welcome to Fresh Start Tuesday. It is the 9th of July and it has just gone 9 minutes past 7. Coming up on the show, I will have your local news and weather at 7:30. And later on in the show, we are going to be chatting to one of the directors of Camino Skies. It is an award-winning film and it is going to be premiering across the top of the South Island starting today. Fergus Grady is going to be chatting to us about the journey to bring us Camino Skies. It is an absolute pleasure to have joining us on breakfast this morning Fergus Grady. Fergus is the co-director of an amazing film that is coming out this week, Camino Skies. And it starts off sort of with a quote from Rolf Emerson that I really love that ties in quite lovely with the film. And it says, "Few people know how to take a walk. The qualifications are endurance, plain clothes, old shoes, an eye for nature, good humour, vast curiosity, good speech, good silence, and nothing too much." Camino Skies is the debut feature documentary from emerging Australian-New Zealand filmmaking team Noel Smythe and Fergus Grady. Independently shot over 42 days, the film follows the journey of 6 strangers as they embark on the historic Camino de Santiago, a historic 800-kilometre pilgrimage that starts in France and works its way through Spain before arriving in the city of Santiago. Each of the characters have their own reasons for walking, but ultimately come together to walk through heartbreak and defy their physical ability. Dealing with themes of loss and hope, the film is an uplifting look at what it means to live with grief. Here to tell us more about this journey is Fergus. Kia ora, Fergus.
Kia ora, Wendy. Good to be with you.
Thank you for having us. So, Fergus, how did this film come to be? You and Noel going, wow, we're going to go over there and film these strangers that we have no idea who they are.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting genesis. Noel and I have worked our entire lives in the film industry since, myself graduating from university. And, you know, it's a tough, long road as sort of young filmmakers. And we wanted to make a film, our first feature film, that we could basically afford with our own savings. So we came up with the idea that we would make a contained journey film, shot over 42 days, as you said, that we would basically have a beginning, hopefully a middle and an end, and we wouldn't need to sort of drag it out over many years. So we just went about contacting various people within the Camino community and found these incredible 6 characters across Australia and New Zealand.
How did you come across these people? What road did you have to go down to find 6 people? Because I was reading an article about one of the men in the film. Now, he's actually done this walk 2 or 3 times. And then you guys contacted him again and asked if he would do it. And yeah, so how did that even come about?
Well, I was looking for people from all different walks of life, ages, and male and female. And we'd already signed up 2 Australian women, and then we came across Terry Wilson's article in the Manawatu Times. He was raising money for cystic fibrosis. Unfortunately, his granddaughter Maddie died of cystic fibrosis at the age of 17, and we thought we'd approach Terry to see whether he'd be interested in walking the same Francais Camino walk again, and he was. Within half an hour of meeting him in Wellington, he signed on, and the next day he rang me and said, how would I feel, or how would Noel and I feel inviting his son-in-law Mark to join us? And that was Maddie's father. So yeah, it was very emotional process to get those 2 gentlemen on board. But once we arrived in France, they were some of the funniest characters I've ever come across, not only in the film industry but in general. They're great gentlemen.
And so for the rest, was it as simple as just coming across the likes of articles or contacting people in Camino? How did this all come about to get your final 6?
Yeah, various ways. I mean, Facebook's an amazing medium these days. Sue runs the Australian Pilgrims community, Facebook community. Claude in Brisbane is self-published author. And then with Julie and Cheryl, Julie we came across through a travel company that we were looking to partner with to help us raise some money to finish the film. And then Cheryl through Facebook. So, yeah, everyone came from different backgrounds and we found them through various mediums.
How did you go about filming such a emotional, personal journey of people?
Well, we were just very lucky that these guys were on board from day one, and they gave us incredible, access to their own personal journees and some of their darkest moments. There is a scene that's been captured through various, news articles and on TV with Julie revealing the death of two of the most important people in her life. And I mean, that was pretty early on in the walk. So, from day one, once we put microphones on them and we had, Noel shooting up his camera, we were really embedded in the really personal stories behind these characters.
Because that is something, your film has gone on, once you released it this year, at the Newport Beach Film Festival and then at the Australasian premiere at the Dock Edge Film Festival, where you did win Best New Zealand Director and Best New Zealand Emerging Filmmaker. It was cited there that your ability to capture intimate, poignant moments with subtlety and restraint while carefully crafting a narrative was both engaging and genuinely moving. So you've obviously, the two of you and Noel, have been able to do this in such a beautiful way. What is it about you both as filmmakers that leads you to be able to do this?
Well, I think we're both inspired by some of the great observational filmmakers out there. And, we didn't really want to be in the film, but I hope that your listeners will be able to see the film when it releases this week. They will hear our voices and occasionally see us in shots, but it was an important part of the process to give a bit of context to what was being said before the question and what was said afterwards, with the response from the subject on camera. But, I guess we're just very lucky filmmakers in the fact that this is our first film and we've been able to, screen it and show it with the American audience in Newport and Auckland and Wellington audiences at Dock Edge, and we're awarded those fantastic prizes, which we're very humbled by. So we've just had a really, really lucky run, and we're doing a Q&A tour in the South Island at the moment. It's an absolute pleasure to bring the film to places like Timaru and Alexandra tonight. And we're just really humbled by the whole process.
Now, what a challenge for your first film to go, right, we're going to go halfway across the world and go on one of the most historic walks. Why?
Well, I think there's an audience. There's an audience for films about, human interest stories, about spirituality, about religion, and just about, the joy and the pleasure of walking in the great outdoors. I mean, Spain is such an incredible country, and the Camino only walks through, a section of it. We definitely got a flavour of the culture and the food and the language, and in the film you'll see there's a couple of wines drunk and beer. So we had a great time doing it. It was definitely difficult, but when I look back and reflect on it, it was one of the greatest working moments of my life.
Have you yourself previously done the walk before you went over to film it?
No, I'd only watched a couple of films about it, and really our research was the week. The first week was our research. We got there actually. We were the last to arrive out of our 9 party, and we sort of basically turned the camera on as soon as we got off the bus. So the first week was always going to be a challenge. We had torrential rain the first 2 days. We were turned back. We weren't able to walk over the Napoleon Way, which is the famous path into Spain from France. So we were really unprepared, and then, after day 2, we were able to sort of put things back on track, and then we eventually ended up with over 150 hours of footage. It was never going to be a question of how many hours. It was about getting it down to an 80-minute film, and then basically having a semblance of, cohesive filmmaking narrative. So, I mean, I hope your listeners can watch the film and have some kind of context of how many hours of footage, 6 to 8 hours a day for 40 days. It was pretty crazy.
So what was that like with so much footage, condensing it down into a short film? What was that like for you both?
Well, it was Financially difficult because when we got back, we'd obviously spent most of the money that we'd had in our bank accounts and credit card to get it, into the can, as the film term. And then we were able, after 6 months of working side jobs, and I have a full-time job in film distribution, and Noel's a director by day, to afford an editor. And we had a young editor based in Melbourne, Ramon Watkins, who did an incredible job. He reviewed every single second of the film that we shot. Even Noel and I, to this day, we haven't seen every single frame of the film that we shot over there. And he was able to put everything into a sort of a timeline that we worked basically back from to get it to sort of 3 months later, an 80-minute film.
Yeah, gosh. And we are very fortunate because it is going to be showing at the Nelson State Cinema on the 11th of July, at the Tākeka Village Theatre also on the 11th of July, in Motueka at the Gecko Theatre on the 18th of July, and Blenheim at the Event Cinema on the 1st of August. So you're covering the entire top of the South Island, also running a couple of Q&As as well, which have already sold out, which shows the popularity this film has already been generating across Aotearoa. Fergus, what is it like for you to be able to come back to Aotearoa and show this film and your work?
It's very important to me as a Kiwi. I've lived in Australia for a while where I did my training, but I've always wanted to tell Kiwi stories. And so this is just hopefully the first of many New Zealand narrative stories that I can share with your listeners and the wider population of Aotearoa. So it's a pleasure, and it's just a privilege. And I should say that we wouldn't have been able to make the film without the support of the New Zealand Film Commission. We showed them a cut of the film in January, and they loved it and jumped on board. And we were able to afford some of the greatest technicians working in New Zealand today, some who had won Oscars and others who had, in their own right, were industry leaders. So the whole process has been an absolute pleasure. And Noel is now an honorary Kiwi, and he's learning some Māori. So, yeah, we're getting some te reo into Noel, and next time we'll come back firing on all cylinders. Noel and I have sat down with some subjects looking at a completely different kind of film, a documentary, and we're looking at following them for the next few years. So we'll see how that progresses. I've got some other plans as well to make some dramatic feature fiction films. So it's just working with great, script writers around the country and making sure that they've got everything they need to develop those scripts to maybe hopefully financing stage, and let's see how we go at the Film Commission.
What's it been like since you've put the film together, you've had the premiere of it, and the people that you filmed over those 42 days have gotten to watch it? What's that like to hear them respond to seeing the film?
Well, it's interesting because we flew everyone to Melbourne in January before we showed the Film Commission the cut. And, Noel and I were very happy and proud of what we put together, but we had no control or no idea what the 6 subjects would think. By the end of the 80-minute rough cut that we screened, everyone was in tears and there were hugs and, laughing and crying. And it was a beautiful moment for us as filmmakers and just as friends of the subjects. And so we didn't have to make any cuts after screening it to the cast, which is quite rare. So we were just really lucky with everyone and everyone's blessings to have, that feedback straight away. So, even a scene like Julie, which you can see in a recent 7 Sharp, interview and story, she talks about having watched that scene 70 times and still cries and has this emotional outburst watching this kind of breakdown that she has in the film. So it's really interesting to see how people react, and we're still getting feedback from our subjects as they watch it over and over again, and every time they see something new. So it's a really cool process for us and them as well. It's something that they have to show to their friends and family.
And for you and Noel, this being your first film, what's that like to have gone into such an in-depth journey with 6 people you didn't know?
Well, it's like forming any friendship, and I think the thing about the Camino and what we found is that it's a place of acceptance. A lot of strangers come into Spain and walk by themselves, and at the end of it, they come away with some lifelong friendships. And Terry, gone on record, he's walked 3 Caminos in the last 2 years. He continually talks about these incredible characters and these guys and women that he's met along the way that will be lifelong friends, and he's even caught up with multiple, European-based Camino walkers on a second and third, times doing it. So it shows that it's a place of, even though it's a cathartic experience for a lot of people, it's a place where people can form incredible friendships and lifelong friendships out of walking such a cathartic, exercise.
How have you managed to pull this off with you being in New Zealand and Noel in Australia and not always together?
Well, working as digital nomads in this day and age is pretty common in the film industry. Most people are freelance and contract-based workers. So for us, it's a daily kind of exercise of getting up early and jumping on the phone, putting together a to-do list of what we need to do. And why Noel and I work so well, we complement each other's strengths. I've got a distribution and sound production background. He works, every day as a cinematographer and a director. And then we kind of have a kind of general understanding of publicity and marketing and social media. So between the two of us, we sort of cover things off. But I should also mention, and we're lucky enough to have brought Phoebe Curran, who was our production manager on the film. She had just finished high school in the UK and was an industry friend's daughter. So, we need someone who speaks Spanish and who can help us with, some of the logistics like booking accommodation. And she landed in Spain and we hadn't met. And 40 days later, she was honestly one of the best assets on the crew and is a lifelong friend now.
Now, this isn't your first step into the film industry. You have worked in Australia and done film over there. What has set this one that you've done with Noel apart from the ones that you have done in Australia previously?
I've worked in a number of kind of roles and capacities in the film industry. I trained and started my career as a boom operator and a sound assistant and worked my way up to sort of recording a couple of independently shot features. And then I moved to the US and got a taste of film distribution, and then came back to Australia, and I've worked sort of in film distribution for the last 5 or 6 years. And between Noel and I, as I said, we've worked our whole careers in the film industry. It's just been sort of plodding along for 10 to 15 years of trying to get our first feature made. And as I said, it's about, building those sort of those strengths and complementing each other's strengths, and that's why we work together so well as a team. So, we're just lucky that we're able to get this feature supported by sort of the state agencies and the government like the New Zealand Film Commission.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful, and you've definitely put in the hard yards to get this done, and just even doing the walk yourselves. Camino Skies is an absolutely beautiful, inspirational film that really does take us on one of the most wonderful, incredible journeys. And I really encourage you, if you are listening in this morning, to head along to one of the screenings in Nelson, Takaka, Motueka or Blenheim to see Camino Skies. It is a film I feel you will remember for the rest of your life. Fergus, thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast this morning.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for having me.